Hi guys, it's the Tura here from Tura Game Vlogs here to bring you Monster Musume episode 8 review. Oh, side note, I now have all the volumes of the manga that are currently out. Volume 7 just came out and I have volume 7. You're probably wondering who's that on volume 7. If you've been looking at the animation keys or if you read the manga, you would know. I'm not going to spoil it for you because it's kind of going into the arc. But let's get to this episode because as I've been saying for a while now, this is the episode I've been looking forward to the most for various different reasons. I feel like, for those who are curious, and I've said it before, Sue Centauri are like some of my favorites. So the fact that this episode focuses on both of them is great. I actually like the Centauria section is probably the deeper of the two, just because it all. And now, to me, it was a good. It's a good way to introduce Ratnera as a character and kind of explain her whole quirk, because the previous episode kind of set her up, but but this episode really kind of tells you what kind of character she is. And it's kind of obvious. She's just as aggressive, I would argue, as Mia in terms of like sexually harassing Kurusu. The difference is that she's just not as physically violent about it. And also that she's the type of girl who appreciates honesty. She doesn't care what the truth is. She just wants the truth. Period. She doesn't care if you hate her or if you want to kill her or all that shit. She just can't stand fakeness. She can't stand people hiding their true selves because they want to be observant, not observant, what's the word I'm looking for? Not observant. Want to be like careful around other people's feelings and shit. She appreciates honesty to the T, which is the whole premise between the first half. The second half, and I'm going to talk about some manga stuff because it relates to the episode. This was the first episode that actively like cut out some decently sized material. Like the other episodes either just didn't miss like a scene or a sentence or some shit. And granted, this episode does that too, but it like actively cuts out like a scene. The scene I'm referring to is that in the episode, right after the bathroom scene, and it skips to nighttime, that may seem kind of weird pacing-wise to you, and there's a reason for that. Because there are a few scenes after that didn't get animated, which I think was just due to time constraints. I'm curious to see if they'll be in the uncensored version, because they are fan service related, but it may not be unless they're just allowed to put extended. It would have been like super extended, it would have been like a minute or two over, but you know, obviously they still have standards by what they got to hold by. So I'll go ahead and explain the two scenes since you may not get to see them animated for a while. Because the whole gag, the scenes are just running with the gag that the bathroom scene set up, where Ratnera is obviously trying to sexually harass Kurusu. Saria doesn't take it that way and tries to play it with a straight face. So the first scene that we skipped is that he's vacuuming and then like she trips him with the thread and positions herself in a way that he should fall on her cleavage, but Saria ends up intercepting that, and he ends up falling in her cleavage. And the other scene is that he's washing clothes, and Ratnera is like, "Oh, here's my shirt," but she's naked now. She doesn't have anything to wear, like she's topless. Ratnera gets topless a lot, I've noticed, especially in the earlier chapters. Loves to get topless. The gag there is Centauria giving her her shirt, but now Centauria's topless, and she runs away and goes, "Don't look, master." Those are like the two scenes they skipped. And granted, it's like 3 pages out of a 40-page chapter, so it's not like they skipped a lot, but those are some of the funner moments of that chapter, which is why I was a little disappointed. Everything else is canon. And then the Sue stuff, to explain that, people might be wondering why didn't Ratnera get her own little thing that she did like everybody else. That's primarily because Ratnera was not introduced in. Ratnera wasn't even a part of the group during this chapter. This chapter technically takes place before the egg-laying chapter. As I've said before, the anime has been moving around chapter positions to introduce the girls quicker, because Ratnera would have still been introduced the same way. They just moved the Sue chapter. And to me, it also makes the Sue character seem inconsistent between the last episode and this episode. Why? Because if you notice in the egg-laying chapter, the beginning of it, Sue was really affectionate towards Kurusu. Why is that? Well, it's because this episode, the Sue section for this episode, that takes place before the egg laying chapter. So it makes sense in the context of the manga because it's like, well, she just gave her love declaration the chapter before, and the beginning of the next chapter, she's like cuddling with him, which makes her adorable. But you know, I mean, Sue's adorable. Period. The whole sick chapter was actually pretty funny. They did play that straight. There is no difference. There might be some fan service censoring type of difference, but other than that, the general idea and the way it went was about the same. There's a few changes in positionings of characters. I think the one thing that confuses me the most is when Mia's rocking in the nurse outfit, and she's like, I need to take your temperature, and she's getting all like old man horny about it. She has like this fucking syringe, and she keeps like randomly jabbing it in her breast. That is random for two reasons. One, she doesn't do that, and two, she doesn't have the syringe in the manga. Why did they decide to put a syringe in her hand? It was such a random difference. Other than that, everything was fine. That was just a random thing to me. And Ratchero, they pretty much threw in a way that she wasn't. I mean, it works for her character. Ratchero, out of the characters, is the most mature. Actually, the next episode is going to show that a lot. So the way they threw her in this episode was fine. Because she's technically not a part of the Sue nursing chapter. She just was because of the way the anime decided to portray it. The anime episode, I really like these two chapters because, for one, this is the chapter that cements that Sue has a thing for him, loves him, and it really explains her over affectionateness in the egg laying chapter because she's now announced that she had a thing for him. See, up until this point, the characters who were openly in love with him, up until the Sue stuff, was just Poppy, Mia, and Centauria hasn't really fully admitted it, but we kind of say it's obvious. Centauria and then Ratchero. Sue and Meryl haven't done that. Meryl has even explicitly stated her goal is to be a mistress, which is why I think, and I've seen some people's reactions to the episode. I don't think a lot of people understand Meryl's gag. Meryl's gag, this is where the inconsistency brings up. If anyone remembers when they first did the Mia cooking episode, they had Sue and Meryl act the same way Poppy and Centauria did when they both had two separate gags. Sue can eat anything and not feel a goddamn thing, so Sue shouldn't have reacted that way. And Meryl, once again, loves that type of shit. This is the gag I was talking about before. The gag is that when she eats that kind of shit, she can't eat it, but she always, when she passes out, unlike everyone else, she does it with a smile on her face because she loves tragedies. Which I think I've seen a lot of people who didn't get the joke at all. And that's because Meryl's joke is kind of weird, but I get it, and it's still pretty funny. I really like that joke. The Sue stuff was adorable. I found Sue adorable. Centauria is especially adorable. And then Ratchero, once again, and then Ratchero's kind of gone up in my list for a while. Like, almost every girl is equal to me, except for, like, a few. I think Meryl is probably the lowest on my list, and I think I've said that before. Just because she's not really fleshed out enough, which is changing as we get through the current manga chapters, I'll say that. But the next episode preview does allude to something I find interesting. There's a particular character that would have been introduced if they did the chapter that goes right after the Ratchero stuff, the Ratchero stuff with Centauria. It looks like they're skipping that and going straight into the first arc of the series, which is the D arc, which will take up the rest of the season. So for anime fans, what we're about to go into is going to last the rest of the season. I'm curious about if they skip the chapter for the sake of timing, which might be it, or if they plan to use another chapter to replace it. I hope it's just timing because you can't really do. I actually looked in the manga. There is no other chapter you can really do that would still work in the context. Will work as a good ending episode, but wouldn't like be a cliffhanger or some shit. So I hope it's just used to add extra time because the later chapters do get kind of meaty because of how ridiculous shit gets. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, overall, I like the episode. This shit was my favorite episode because I love those characters. I love Sue. I love Centauria. Ratchero's up there. I enjoy the characters. So, good shit. Anyways, please leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. This has been the Insane Game Freak, Terrell Game Vlogs, and I will catch you guys later. Lost the game for your boy Terrell, and it's up.